Today's episode of Off the Timeline is titled The Championship That Never Happened. What if I told you the most controversial season in college football history never actually happened? Not because the games weren't played, not because the players weren't real, but because four programs disappeared before the season ever began in this alternate universe. Texas, LSU, Notre Dame, and Texas Tech. No scandal, no explanation, just gone. Players transferred, coaches scattered, recruits changed plans, and college football took a completely different path. And that sets the table for the largest transfer in college football history. Most of the country focused on the coaches. Mac Brown left behind a national title contender. Les Miles left behind LSU. Mike Leach found a new home. But the coaching carousel wasn't the largest story. One player was, Vince Young. In our reality, Vince Young became a Texas legend. In this reality, Texas doesn't exist, and suddenly the most gifted player in college football is available. Virginia Tech already had a great defense. They already had Frank Beamer. They already had one of the toughest home environments in America. What they didn't have was a superstar capable of carrying them to a national championship. Well, now they did. The moment Vince Young arrived, everything changed. And that sets the table for USC the dynasty. The problem for Virginia Tech was that another team had already claimed college football, USC, defending national champions. The Trojans weren't just winning games, they were becoming a dynasty. And with Texas gone, the one team that had historically challenged them for the national title no longer stood in their way. Most people expected USC to cruise towards another championship. But there was one problem. Actually, there were two. And that sets the table for Auburn's second chance. Auburn entered the 2005 season carrying a grudge. In 2004, they had gone undefeated and still missed the national title game. For an entire offseason, they heard the same thing. Wrong conference timing, wrong schedule, wrong circumstances, better luck next year. Now they had another chance, and they weren't interested in hearing excuses. Every Auburn victory felt personal. Every ranking felt personal. Every poll felt personal. And that sets the table for the race for the championship. By October, college football had a major problem. USC, Auburn, and Virginia Tech kept winning. Nobody was separating. Nobody was blinking. Every Saturday ended the same way. 3 contenders, 3 victories. 3 fan bases becoming more convinced they were watching the best team in the country. And that sets the table for the Oregon Revolution. And then something else started happening. Out west, Mike Leach quietly began changing football at Oregon. They weren't the largest story in the sport yet, but while everyone obsessed over the championship race, Leach was spreading the field wider than most coaches thought possible, throwing more often, playing faster, forcing defenses into situations they had never prepared for. At the time, it looked strange. A few years later, it would look extremely familiar. And this sets the table for November, the BCS nightmare. Back to the title race, November arrived, and still nobody lost. USC, Auburn, and Virginia Tech survived all challenges. The deeper the season went, the worse the situation became for the BCS. Because the BCS wasn't designed for this. The system could handle 2 great teams. It couldn't handle 3 undefeated major conference champions. By the end of the regular season, the debate had become impossible. USC, Auburn, and Virginia Tech were all undefeated. Somebody was getting left out, and everybody knew it. And that sets the table for Selection Sunday. When the final rankings arrived, the decision was made. USC would play Auburn for the national title. Virginia Tech was left out, an undefeated major conference champion. No loss, no collapse, no bad weekend, no title opportunity, just excluded. The reaction was immediate. How could an undefeated team not get a chance? How could a championship system claim to identify the best team while refusing to let one of the remaining unbeaten teams compete? Virginia Tech fans were furious. Neutral fans were confused. And suddenly, Auburn fans found themselves in a strange position. Because 1 year earlier, they had been the team left out. Now somebody else was going through the same thing. And that sets the table for the national championship game. The championship game finally arrived. USC and Auburn delivered exactly the kind of game people expected. Physical, fast, and close. Auburn refused to go away. Every time USC looked ready to take control, Auburn answered. But championship teams usually get one final opportunity. USC got theirs late, with the Trojans driving down the field and finding the end zone. And when the clock finally expired, USC had survived. Another championship, another celebration, another trophy. Officially, the debate was over. Unofficially, it was just beginning. And that sets the table for the team left behind. In the same bowl season, Virginia Tech ended up playing Oregon. Now, most bowl games are forgotten. This one wasn't, because every snap felt like evidence. Every touchdown felt like evidence. Every Vince Young highlight felt like evidence. Virginia Tech won. The Hokies finished 13-0. Still undefeated, still untested by the team that won the national championship. Still wondering what might have happened. And that sets the table for the debate. And that question becomes the story. Not who won, who never got the chance. For USC fans, the answer was simple. Win the championship game and you're the champion. For Virginia Tech fans, the answer was just as simple. If you're undefeated, how can anyone claim you weren't the best team? The arguments lasted months, then years, then decades. Some historians would later point to this season as the moment playoff conversations accelerated. Others would point to the rise of Oregon and Mike Leach as the beginning of football's offensive revolution. But most people remember something much simpler. 3 undefeated teams, 2 championship spots, and 1 impossible decision. And a Virginia Tech team that spent the rest of its existence asking a question nobody could answer. What happens when a team does everything right and still never gets the opportunity to prove it's the best? Maybe USC was the national champion. Maybe Virginia Tech was. That's the problem. We'll never know. Because the game everyone wanted to see was never played. And if you enjoyed this college football alternate history deep dive, hit like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next timeline.